Mwasibire muta, mwasibye mutya, amahoro, agandi, byaibo, habari gani, muraho, sangonini, kopango, odeo. For those of you who are wondering what that was, these are some of the various local greetings found in East Africa's diverse languages. Welcome to SheCentre, the female podcast, where I dive into the issues and experiences that affect women everywhere. I am your host, Resti Kansime, and I am passionate about creating a safe space for women to share their stories and triumphs. I want to thank you for tuning into my podcast, and I would love for you to join our community and stay connected with us beyond this episode. You can find us on Instagram at _SheCentre_podcast and follow us on Facebook at the SheCentre podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and hit that follow and like button on our social media to be part of the conversation. Welcome back, my SheCentre family. It's always a joy to share stories that have the power to transform lives. A special welcome to our new family members joining us for the first time. Make yourself at home, please. And don't forget to explore our previous episodes. You won't regret it. As promised, our mental health journey continues this week with a compelling episode. Our guest, someone who has turned pain into purpose, is no stranger to me. But her story became even more profound when I had the privilege of reading her book. In the first part of this 2-part episode, fortunate Ingabire joins us. She's not just a mom, a lawyer, and a mental health advocate, but someone who has gracefully navigated the complexities of life. Raised in Western Uganda by her paternal grandparents, Fortunate's story reflects the significant role her grandfather played, a major father figure, a source of protection, and a reflection of God in her life. The unexpected turns began during her final law exams when her beloved grandfather passed away, plunging her into confusion and anxiety. Her journey into motherhood marked the surprising revelations and challenges becoming a turning point. Today, we touch the surface of her profound experiences, leaving you eager for part 2. In this episode, she shares in detail about her upbringing, reflecting on the childhood memories and up to university and up to the time when she found out that she was with child. So don't miss the next installment of Fortunate's narrative. Tune in and stay connected to the SheCentre community. Enjoy. Hi, Fotsi, how are you doing?
I'm okay, Resti. How are you doing? It's so good to be here.
It's so good to have you. I'll actually tell you one thing interestingly I didn't tell you before we started recording. When I posted a recent story of one mom who was sharing her story of her child, one of your people reached out to me and said, "Get Fotsi on this podcast ASAP."
I wonder who that was.
Fifi.
But I
So Fifi,
appreciate
I'm sure you're
I
happy. I'm sure
appreciate you, Fifi.
Fifi, I'm sure you're like, I told her she was among the first people I reached out to, and we have an appointment in December. And she was like, "Good, thank you." Then I'm like, "How about you, Fifi? When are you coming onto the podcast?" She's like, "Hey, okay, let's make that plan." So I'm sure Fifi is going to be very happy, and I also can't wait to have her as a guest. But you've been a voice for so many women on your platform, your social media, and the work that you're doing. Farm is really encouraging. I have known you through my sister, but I read your book and shared it with friends who were truly inspired. They didn't tell you, but I guess I can deliver the message. Everyone said they cried through the whole book, first of all. And the people who I shared the book with are people who hadn't gone through exactly what you went through, but there are people who had something similar. And the reason why I reached out to you is because I feel like every person has, like, you have told so much of your story, but it's always much more interesting when you tell your story when another person is the one asking you the questions, don't you think? Because when you sit down as on the camera, you're saying something, but I have a feeling, maybe I'm hoping I might get some more other parts of your story when I am the one who is asking you. So, yeah, once again, thank you for honoring me and for accepting to be a guest on the podcast. And like I start out asking all my guests, can you just, briefly tell us about your childhood, how it might have impacted the person that you are right now, and how you see the world?
Okay, thank you once again, Resty, for having me here. It's such
Mm,
an absolute honor to be
mm,
here.
yeah.
Fifi, thank you. You're my soul sister. I guess that's what they say about the power of community and
Yeah.
friendship. And certainly, I'm also grateful to Imi because I mean, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have met
I
you
know.
if it
If it
wasn't for
wasn't
her.
for Amy.
So yeah,
Yeah.
there is power in community and connection. So
Mm,
I'm grateful
yeah.
for those. And
Mm,
then maybe just to say that I, beyond you saying that what I do is, I don't know, whatever it is, I wanted to also acknowledge the fact that you have such a deep heart. I mean, it's not every day that someone will be very far away from back home and then still continue to look out for their friends. So what you did was a noble thing, and my hope and prayer is that the friends that we sent the book to are still
mm,
healing gradually, because I know it's a
yeah.
process. It's not a
Yeah.
marathon. It takes time.
Yeah.
So my hope and
Mm,
prayer for them is that they will continue to experience God's love
mm,
and embrace, especially in those moments where they get back into that point where they wish they
yeah.
were not. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So back to your question,
Mm,
telling you about my childhood. I think it's quite interesting, and
mm.
well, I've shared it a million times. Unlike the English people, Bazungu,
Mm,
I like to think that I'm also from a blended family.
mm,
Blended in the sense that I was pretty much raised by my grandparents, paternal,
mm,
but I have connections with both my maternal and paternal family,
mm,
and those have pretty much formed my childhood. So
mm,
at a certain age, I moved to my grandparents' home, and then I later moved into my paternal uncle's home. I
mm,
lived with my dad, biological dad, for a short while.
mm,
So most of my childhood really is with my grandparents and
mm,
my paternal uncle.
yeah.
And what I remember most really is that because I was the youngest with my grandparents as like a last
Mm,
born, I don't know
mm,
how that made the real last born feel, but yeah, as like the last born. But then also
mm,
because my grandparents were pretty much advanced, it simply meant that I didn't have many playmates. I only
mm,
had playmates during Christmas holidays. Yeah, it's December. So around this time,
yeah. Yeah.
people
Yeah.
would
When
come back
everyone
to the
comes over.
village.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I would come to the village, and it was usually exciting. That's when you would receive a Christmas dress, some new shoes
Mm,
from Kampala. Usually, sometimes
yes.
it would be
Yeah.
clothes for your elder cousin, and they don't fit them anymore, and they give them
Hand
to
me
you.
down.
Yeah, usually it was a hand me down. Yeah, but it
Yeah.
was always exciting. I mean, you didn't
Yeah.
have
It
it
was. Yeah.
before, so yeah, you know
Mm,
that kind
yeah.
of thing. And then
Mm,
my grandparents were pretty much strict,
mm,
and I don't know if my grandmother remembers. However,
mm,
there's a plant. If you use
mm.
that plant to beat someone, their
It
body
itches.
literally itches for I don't know for
I
how long.
know
Yeah.
it. I know it.
So there was
I
that
know it.
particular plant, and every time I would get out of home to go and play with the kids in the neighborhood, when I would
Oh,
return home,
the plant
my
has ate
grandmother would
you.
have it somewhere. And
Oh.
so, of course, that also meant that I didn't move out a lot. Yeah. Oh, wow, wow. This
Mm,
is quite some childhood debunking. Yeah. So, it meant I didn't really step out as much to play
Mm,
with kids outside home.
mm, mm,
And what else do I recall about my childhood? I've always been, oh, they've always told me I'm brilliant, so I was a
mm,
brilliant child.
mm,
And but then also because I knew that making sure I have good grades would impress my granddad, I think I
mm.
did everything it took to be the
Wow.
best. I don't
Okay.
know if that could have been a ground for my, now that I'm older, I think that I'm a
Mm,
recovering people pleaser. So I
mm.
think I used to please my granddad by making sure I
Yeah.
have good grades.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember once I really wanted to make my granddad happy, but I don't like milk. So
Mm,
breakfast would sit on the dining and then take our tea. I am the child in the house, so after taking my tea, I would have to go and show my granddad or my grandmom. Then they would give
mm,
me a thumbs up. But this particular day, I think all I wanted was him to say, "Oh, very well done," and I didn't want to take the milk, so I went and poured it through the window. But remember, I was very short. So, of course, when I
mm,
showed him my cup, he was very proud of me. And then a couple of days later, I think my grandmom was trying to clean, and then she went, no, not clean. We used to have fruits, these red passion fruits at
mm.
the backyard. So she went to pick them, and then I think she noticed stains of
Milk.
milk through the window. My
Oh.
goodness, I was beaten.
Oh.
So those are some of the things I remember about my childhood. And then I also
Mm,
remember there's a time I went to there's a place in the village where they used to collect water from, but then kids on the village would also go and start swimming from there. So I
mm.
went with the kids from the village in the hope that I would be back on time. And lo and behold, I came very late, and that also meant that I was going to be beaten.
Oh.
So pretty much of my childhood is about what you should do, what you
What
should
you
not do,
Yeah.
and then, of course, beyond that, also finding a place of security. And
Mm,
usually it was my granddad because the
mm,
disciplinarian was my grandmom. So if you don't want
mm.
to be beaten, make sure you're close to your grandfather because then your granddad will protect you.
Mm,
So at a certain point, people in the village used to call me the little mayor because everywhere my granddad went, I would follow. That was the only
mm,
opportunity I had to get out of
mm,
home. Yeah.
mm,
And growing up, even as well beyond the 10s to 18 and beyond, I
mm,
realized that it was the same with even my paternal uncle. Because, for example,
mm,
if I wanted to get out of home, it
mm,
was easier for me to say I'm going for a discussion at, let's say, Sharing Hall in Zambia than
mm.
to say I'm going to
I'm
meet
going to
my
meet my
friends.
friends. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I didn't have much of that. How do I think that has affected my outlook towards life generally? I believe life should be structured.
Mm,
Although, well, that's changing a bit, but I believe at a certain point you must be home.
mm.
This is not something you should be doing because, well,
Yeah.
that's how I was raised. I don't
Mm.
understand how, for example, you will party until 5 a.m. Well, I have tried it, but I feel like this is not, it
You're
doesn't
doing
make
something
sense.
wrong.
It doesn't make sense, yeah.
Mm,
And even after I made good friends and I was
mm,
comfortable with moving out and I now had my independence,
mm,
that thing of this is how life is has never really
mm,
gotten out of me. Now, I don't know
mm,
how their childhood was because
mm.
it could be the same things happen and
Probably
then
was.
you wait for when you get married and then you start doing things that
Mm,
you
mm.
had limitation to do,
Yeah.
but then eventually you still outgrow it. So I now realize as I grow older, I realize that it's pretty much a cycle because even
Yeah.
after you break out and get your independence, at a certain point you realize
You
that you
find
can't do
yourself
it every day. So you
you find
begin to
yourself back to
discipline
the same
yourself.
roles. Yes, yes.
Exactly.
You're actually very right.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
pretty much about my childhood. And then maybe just to say that still because of my childhood, I have nine, eight siblings.
Mm. Are some of these your uncles who or real actual siblings?
No, no, no,
Because
no,
if
no.
you okay, because if you grew up with your grandpa, then kind of sometimes you might feel like your his children are your are your relatives, are your brothers and sisters, your
Now,
uncles.
interestingly,
Mm,
even beyond that, I've always had the wisdom to discern, and or
mm,
to discern in the sense that I can create a distinction. These guys
mm,
are a little bit okay, not very old, but there's slight difference. So I know these are my aunties, these are my
mm,
uncles, these are my
mm,
cousins. But now
mm.
biologically, I have siblings on my mom's side, I have siblings on my
Ah, oh
dad's
yes,
side, and
yes,
then I
yes.
have an array of siblings from my uncles and aunties. So I like to say that I am a sister to
Family
many.
life. Many,
Yeah.
my dear, I hear you.
Yeah, but
I I am also like I have so many sister. When I came here the first time, every time I would put on like every time it was like someone's birthday, you put happy birthday sis, happy birthday bro, and my friend in class asked me, "How many siblings do you have?" I'm like, "It depends. I have on my dad's side, then on my mom's side, then I have my cousins who I grew up with who are practically also my siblings." And he's like, "That's so weird," because he was like, "I don't even have cousins."
can you imagine?
Yeah.
Can you
So I
imagine?
understand the dynamics in the African society. Like your cousins are not your cousins, they are your siblings, which
Exactly. And
always adds on to the
my spouse likes to say that traditionally there is no such thing as cousin sister
cousin.
or cousin
Exactly.
brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not in our language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are those
Oh.
dynamics. I have very many siblings. But then of course also I have noticed that as we evolve and grow,
Mm,
sometimes you need to get to a point where you acknowledge the fact that indeed these are my cousins, these are my
mm,
sisters, these are my brothers. Because sometimes, even without you being the one to say it,
mm,
someone will tell them, that one is not your sister, that is your
mm,
cousin.
mm,
So,
mm.
again, that is life changing how you view
Yeah.
things, because again life is life, so you have to
Mm,
get to a point where you acknowledge
mm.
there
Yeah.
is no is and was. Yeah.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
very true. And how was life when was it that you stopped living in with your grandparents and moved to Kampala? Was it when you were really young or when you were older?
No, when I was slightly older. So
Mm,
I first came to Kampala, I think, in my S1.
mm.
Now in
For
my
school
S1,
or visiting?
no, that was I came for holidays. So
Ah, okay.
that time I was staying with my dad
Mm,
and my then stepmother.
mm,
Yeah. And then after that holiday, when I went
mm,
back to school,
mm,
the next time I came to Kampala, I went to
mm,
my uncle's home.
mm,
I kept moving in and out, Kampala, Kisoro, Kampala, Kisoro,
yeah.
until officially S5. Because when I came
Mm,
to S5, I came to Kampala, studying
mm,
from St. Joseph's Girls, Zambia.
mm. Oh, that's when
So,
you moved. How was that transition for you?
well, it seemed okay, but
Mm,
the challenge I had was with the school instead, because
mm,
as from Immaculate Heart in Rukunjiri,
mm.
and I found that people there are warm, very very warm. So, like for
Yeah.
example, in S1, when we
Mm.
went to school, there was already a parade waiting to pick our items and take them to the dorm. Yeah, and
Ah,
they would
yeah.
literally help you arrange your bed. What it was
Mm,
very nice. Now,
mm.
on the other hand, in S5, when we came in, my God, it was a real culture shock of like, nobody cares. Take your stuff
Yeah,
there, open your
yeah.
things, get out your
Mm,
black skirts, and let's look at them, put them back, figure out where you're
mm.
going.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
that was the trickiest part of it.
Mm.
Then, in as far as home is concerned, there wasn't much of a difference. I already had rules from back home. So it was as simple as making sure I follow the rules over here.
Yeah.
And then I
And
also
Catholic
noticed,
schools rules are like basically the same rules you get at home. Like wake up at this time, say the rosary.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, of course, apart from, there was also a lot of, I don't want to call it manual labor, but there's a lot of manual labor in both places. In the sense
Mm.
that you have times when you have to go and peel, you have to go and clean, you have to go,
Yeah.
so many things.
Yeah.
How have those affected me? If
Well.
I can get help, I will look for the help. I have become a soft life
Yes.
ambassador. Of course,
Trust me, I understand what you're saying. Like
everyone will tell you you're
there are
lazy.
times where you see people fighting to do housework and stuff, and you're like, guy, I
Are
did
you
it for
okay?
free. I did it
Are
for
you
free in
fine?
school.
Yeah.
I did it for
So
free in school without being paid. I'm not here to please anyone. Please do your thing. I understand what you're saying. I also went to boarding school where manual labor was like traumatic even to say the least. Yeah. And I know how that can really make you hate. And you go back to holidays, and if you're doing the same thing, you can be like, what's this?
standard, and then you have to go to the borehole and collect water. And then also a thing that is significant for me when
Mm,
it comes to childhood really are the
mm,
things some people tell you about yourself. Like, for
mm,
example, I remember one of my relatives saying,
mm,
I think they wanted me to do something,
mm,
and either I didn't do it well, and
mm,
then as she's talking to her mother, she's like, that one is only good in things of academics. So manyanga housework, what, she'll not be as efficient. Now, even
mm,
that really hit
mm,
hard. But then
mm,
later, when I was talking to my other auntie, after I grew up, of course, she told me, you know what, this is why we study. If you can
mm,
get help, don't suffer.
mm,
So
mm,
that might have affected me at that point, because then I also had the belief that, well, manual work, not quite. So I will focus on
mm,
the things that I have my strengths in. But
mm.
then you realize it's just a narrative that has been put into your mind, but you
Yes,
have the
yes,
capacity to turn it
yes,
around. Yeah.
yes, yes. That's very true. That's
Yeah.
very true.
So
And
really,
how was
that's it
your?
in sum about my childhood.
It sounds like I have a lot to relate to. I didn't grow up like full time in the village, but I spent a lot of time in my primary years going to the village for holidays at my grandma's place. We were really young, and to me, in my head, I felt like it was like tough and all those things. But I feel like my grandmother really gave us. Okay, we weren't allowed to even visit. I barely knew anything so much outside. Like in the city, we would just pass through or go through with a car. But we did do a lot of housework, which I think in her mind, she felt like this is something I just want them to learn how to do stuff.
Mm.
But she was also tough. Like there's a time I remember asking her for boots, and she said, I put on boots, you also put on boots. It's okay. Don't go to the farm,
Can
don't
you
dig.
can you imagine?
If you don't want to dig without boots, then just leave, because there's no way we can be at the same level. And
Ah,
she didn't only refuse to do that for me. Like for me, that was at a point when I was like grown up. You know, when you're like P6, there, like, you know what? I'm not going to go digging anymore without boots. Like I'm tired of this. I'm going to stand up. But what she was teaching me that time was she was sending us to dig with my cousins from the village, and they didn't have boots. So she wasn't about to give me boots and make me look like the one who is privileged and not give
uh,
the others. So the boots were there. She could have given them to me, but she had to make me realize that you can't be treated special here.
differently.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. And grandparents have a way of doing that. Although they have, like, my
Yes.
grandmother was so soft on us, because my mom keeps saying, you guys did nothing. And I'm like, what? We collected water and filled drums and did what, and dug, and went weeding, collecting firewood and all those things. My mom was like, you did nothing. Like your grandmother was basically just trying to give you like the least work.
Are you
But
serious?
yeah, my mom, apparently for them they were like real manual labor, like slave trade, slavery or something like that. But
That's very interesting.
one thing I have realized about my life is I did grow up both Kampala and in Fort Portal, like
Mm,
partially in my primary school years. But when I sit back and look back, my happy memories are all those memories with my grandma, going to the
mm.
well, falling in the I literally fell in the well, like real
What?
falling. Yes, they pulled me out by legs. And those are my happiest memories. And yet I hated every bit of it while I was going through it. But when I look back, it made me who I am right now. When I
Wow.
meet someone who is from the village, I feel so home because when they're talking, I can be like, man, we did this. And they're telling me, oh, now we have boreholes. I'm like, wait, as we went to the real, people are like, you know this lifestyle? I'm like, yes, I know that lifestyle. So it is quite unique. If you ever sit down and talk to someone who has never experienced that life, it will be unique how your story is to them, and they will envy you for that. And yet you feel like that was like the sad part about your life. So I am glad that you also got to experience both the village life and Kampala life.
Yeah,
Have you
but you see now the
seen?
other interesting thing is that for me, when I experienced village life and Kampala life, I
Mm,
think usually my manual labor experiences were more in school than at home,
yeah, yeah.
because now for me that was just one incident, but then
Mm,
because my by our standards in the village, my
mm,
grandparents were affluent, they were well to do, honestly,
mm,
so
mm,
I didn't really have to go to the garden because they could afford to hire people to do that stuff.
mm,
But
mm.
it was different once I got out of that environment to go to
To go to
school,
school.
because then I
Ah,
had to do the work,
mm,
and
mm,
unfortunately I
mm,
didn't probably know how to do it. And
mm,
then back at home, small things like, let's go and peel this, go and do that. If I didn't do it with the speed that, for example, my singer expected,
mm,
then it was
mm.
time for her to just throw in like a comment and is like, hey, this
She
one, get
doesn't
it.
know. That's
Yeah.
quite interesting. That's quite interesting.
And
The
then,
way you're saying your grandma was like tough, I figured she would like really make you do this. So at home, she wasn't really making you do like a lot of work.
no, the only work she wanted me to do, on if I can remember, because I was still very young. And then you see,
Mm,
after I grew up, senior one, senior two, I
mm.
left.
Ah,
That was the
boarding
time for me
school.
to do the real work. Now I
Ah.
wasn't there. But then
Mm,
once you figure out also, which is, I don't know if kids these days do it as well. Once you
mm.
figure out that now I'm old enough to do certain work, you don't want to leave Kampala because you don't want to go do the work. Like,
I
holidays
know.
have just started, they're
Yes,
only for
yes.
3 weeks. Now,
Yeah.
actually, the easier work for you to do is to go and probably babysit for one of your aunties or uncles who's just had a child. Easier work to do.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
yeah,
that kind of thing. But
yeah.
her being tough, pretty much from what I recall, was, I think, her not wanting me. And I think it was from a good place. So, I mean, you're a
Mm,
girl
mm,
child,
mm.
anything could happen to you
Yeah,
when you're out
yeah,
there.
it is. Yeah, and it's
And then
quite scary
also,
in the
if you,
village for
yes,
girls because like
we,
14,
we
15, they are getting pregnant, they are getting raped.
absolutely.
Mm.
And we're in the middle of town,
Mm.
and there's an influx of prostitutes within my district.
Oh,
There's an
okay.
influx of
Yeah.
prostitutes, and beyond that,
Mm.
there were very early
Pregnancies.
pregnancies,
Yeah,
childhood
yeah.
pregnancies. So
Mm.
I think, although I've never really asked her to ask her, so why did you do this? But I
Mm.
have a feeling it was from
That's
that
why to
place of
protect
like, you
you.
know
Yeah,
what, you can't keep
yeah.
getting out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, things
That's
like that.
Yeah, they did it. She did it the way she could. Even us, my grandma, were like, we're not allowed. If she would find us on the road, even talking to people, she'd be like, "What are you doing?" Like she just wanted us to be home. Like, do what? Just stay home. And even if there were people working, she was like, for her, her thing was, "I need you to learn how to work. That's why your parents sent you here." But I think grandparents are really wise in how they raise children.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
They
I
seem
find it
gentle,
very
but
amazing.
not
Yeah.
gentle.
Yeah, they are not gentle, but not gentle. My grandmother used to beat so much, but for some reason, us, we didn't get beaten. I think she only beat Amy once. For me, I think once because I did something really stupid. I don't even want to say it. That was the first and last time my grandmother ever laid a hand on me. Amy, I think she slapped her because she was talking back at her. But when my mom talks, like my grandma is called Kabatera, and that means I would beat you,
Wow, I'll
like
beat you.
literally. So my mom said she used to beat them because she was a teacher and she would always tell them, "You do not know what my name is." So by the time we reached us, the time we grew up, she was so
Mm.
soft. And right now she's softer than softer.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's yeah, like right
That's
now she
also very
doesn't do
interesting.
anything.
My
Yeah.
grandmom right now, I'm sure if you asked her, do you remember doing this? She'd be like, no, I don't
I've
remember.
never done
But
it.
because as they grow older, things
Yeah.
change. They
Yeah.
probably even forget. They're like, me, did I do that? I don't remember
Yeah.
doing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. But
again,
that's
the
good.
cycle
Yeah.
of life.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. But and so, how was the life at uni and working space and all that stuff? How did you transition into the university?
Well, transitioning was exciting.
Mm. Freedom at last.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Mm.
But then there's still a very high level of dependency. So you have to
Mm.
make sure that you're in line.
Mm.
But then also, university was significant in my life in so many ways.
Mm.
One, I met my first official boyfriend. Like, I met a
Mm.
boy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, still again, because of my belief in things must be structured,
Mm.
and I think the fear of I might be reprimanded or something like that.
Mm.
Even when I had the opportunity, for example, to go out and come home in the morning,
Mm.
I'd be telling my friends, guys, we need to go home. My boyfriend is going to be mad at me. I was
Oh
such
my
a child,
God.
but it's also because I was
Mm.
naive. I don't know.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
many things like those. So now at that point, there was a group of girls that used to go out a lot. They were my friends. Now at
Mm.
that point, they were like, if you want to go out and come very late, we're not going to call Fortunate. We shall not call Fotsy. He used to call me Fotsy. We will not
Yeah.
call Fotsy. If we are going but we are coming early, we shall call her. But now
Mm.
what that meant is that eventually there was a total isolation because,
They don't
campus, you
want
go
to.
out to
They
the
don't want you
party.
to ruin their night. Yes.
Yeah, the party is starting at midnight. So, what's the point?
If I know the group that you're talking about, then I understand why. Because they never wanted to leave the bar.
There was also another one. There is that, but there's also
Eh,
another one.
if
Yeah.
it's the
So,
one that I know, they always closed up. So I understand. But I
but now,
always.
interestingly, for the one that
Mm.
I sometimes would get more encouragement to stay. I think because then I was
The
older
fun. Ah,
and
okay, okay.
said boyfriend was no longer in the picture. He was not around.
Mm.
So said boy, I think, kept me grounded for some time in my first year, and I think it was
Mm.
good for me because I still had
Mm.
those rules and structures around me.
Yeah.
Now, when
Yeah.
it comes to self drive and all,
Mm.
that was also something different for me because in school they were telling us go and read, go and do that, but now there's
Mm.
nobody chasing you and saying go and
Yeah.
study. So that means you
Yeah.
must create the time for it. And
Yes.
then also, my dynamics were in such a way that even with the dependency, I didn't want to keep calling home because actually, when I started campus, it meant that to figure out upkeep and all, I would sometimes go home on the weekend. Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
So, and sometimes you go home on the weekend. I don't know if it's a lesson my uncle was trying to teach me. I've
Mm.
gone very far. I've spent so much money going home. And then he
Mm.
would give me money and tell me, call me, I'll send you more money.
Mm.
Now, once you've given me what you've given me, in my
Mm.
head I'm thinking,
Mm.
this is what you have. Because if you had more, you would have
You would
given
have
it
given.
all to me. So that
Mm.
also meant when you say call me, I will not call you. Now,
Mm.
I had to figure it out of, okay, so now if I'm not going to call him or
Mm.
my granddad or anyone for that matter, even my dad, so what am I
Mm.
going to do? So now I
Mm.
had to look for work. So I got a
Mm.
job at the university in the computer lab.
Mm.
And I got my first check. I think they were paying us 200K, 150K.
That was a lot.
Yeah, I think it must have been that much.
Mm.
Or maybe even 100K. I don't know. But all I know is that the very first time I got a check was in my second year because after the first year I was like, fortunate. There is no way I'm going to go home on the weekend, then make my
Mm.
uncle suffer because my uncle said call me. Then I have to call him and then he says, I'm like, what if he says, call me tomorrow? Tomorrow becomes
Mm.
another day. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do
Mm.
that. So then I
Mm.
got a job in the computer lab and I stopped calling. So that
Mm.
was still my campus transition.
Mm.
Now, The other thing that helped me at a certain point during campus was the fact that there's a time my granddad came to Kampala,
Mm.
and then I went home to my uncles to see them, and then they had to drop me back to hostel.
Come. Mm.
Now, as we were going to the hostel, there was a couple strolling in the streets of Chikoni,
Man,
a
those
boy
people
and
used
a
to
girl
really.
in the corner there. And I think that was a turning point for me. At that point, even if I didn't call my granddad to say anything, he would be the one to call me and say, "Do you have
Mm.
upkeep? Do you
They
have?"
were, they were like, we don't want this to happen.
As in, that was a turning point for me of, okay, I already gotten that cat job, but now this became like a turning point, because I think in
Ah,
his head, he was
he was
like,
like,
eh,
I've
if this
seen it.
girl doesn't have upkeep, this is what is going to happen. What he didn't know though was that before he saw these people, I had met a
Mm.
cowboy. You get it? So, still, dynamics. And that's why I was telling you that I think my grandmother's actions then must have been to
Mm.
protect me, because now if I
Yeah.
relate this to what my granddad did after that, it is very obvious
Mm.
that they were trying to protect me.
Yeah.
And from that point onwards, I honestly didn't suffer, because, like, for example,
They had.
if my dad sent me money for school fees,
Mm.
there was a special arrangement somewhere where sometimes my granddad would give me money and tell me to pay for school fees. But then there are times also when my dad would call me and say, "You pay school
Mm.
fees, or I'm coming to see you." Now,
Mm.
I don't know if still I was naive or just a child or very honest. As soon
Mm.
as I received money from either, I would call my
You'd call the
granddad.
other one.
"I have
Mm.
got the money, what do I do?"
Mm.
You
Yeah.
can't imagine, my granddad would tell me, "Keep
Mm.
that money on your bank account. We shall
Mm.
start from there next semester."
Mama.
But, and that was a lot of money. Imagine, because I
How?
was doing,
How do you?
I was doing
It's
glow.
better you tell me to send it to you rather than let
Uh,
me have it.
he would say, "Keep it on the account." So now I think that also taught me this self-discipline at a certain level,
Yeah,
because
that has to
then I
be.
knew. Remember, he
If
said,
you spend
"We
it,
shall start from there
yeah. So
next
you remember
semester."
how much to top up.
Absolutely. So it simply means I have my tuition for the entire
Oh,
semester with me. So
wow.
that also taught me
Discipline.
discipline. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's now that I realize that if at that point I had people had told me I could buy land in, let's say, Chira at 2 million shillings, I would now be a landlord, because I had a lot of money on my account. Okay, school fees, yes,
Mm,
but it was there.
yeah. Mm,
Um, then from university, really everything was smooth, and then I got to Law Development Center.
mm,
But before, yeah, I went to Law Development Center, and while I was at Law Development Center, I graduated in January of that same year.
mm,
And unfortunately, in that very year, that was 2013, my
mm,
granddad passed away towards
mm,
Easter time. Um, and that was heart wrenching, to say the least.
yeah.
But then also, when I look back now, I'm like, oh, maybe he'd done his part. I mean, he had seen me through graduation from
Mm,
first
mm,
year to fourth year, and as now a lawyer. I'm sure at
mm,
that point he knew that, or even
mm,
God knew that I would be able to survive, because
mm,
one of my deepest fears, honestly, had always been losing him, because I always
mm,
wondered, then what? And also
mm,
because, from what I told you,
mm,
he was my shield. They want to
mm,
beat you, come here.
yeah.
Oh, let's go, because now I have an opportunity to get out of the house
Yeah.
and out of the gate. So, for lack of a better word, he was, I don't want to say, he was a reflection of God in my life. Now that I
Mm,
say
yeah.
that God is our father, you get
Yes.
it.
Yes.
So
Yes.
he
Yes.
was the major father figure I had. Yes, I have my biological dad, of
Mm,
whom I am very pleased to have their blood flow within my own
mm. But your
body. But then
grandpa.
it doesn't take away the fact that all of us, him and I, still
Mm,
have our roots in that man. his father. Yeah. So, and then significantly for me, because I was a child, and maybe this is also very critical for me now, that kids keep at heart what they see and what they feel. Because from my childhood now, I grew up knowing and believing, if you have a person who is your true representative of a dad, but beyond that, the person who you believe loved you so deeply beyond anyone else could ever love you.
Mm.
I know now that I am older and probably wiser. We all refer, sometimes we'll go to the Bible and then we'll relate the love of God to the love we feel as children. Yeah, because I mean, they've told us we are God's children. And I also appreciate the fact that not everyone listening to us now is a Christian, but I also know that all of us, religious or spiritual, we know that there is a higher power somewhere, and that higher power is supreme and is more than able to make things possible. Yeah. So for me, what I believed was that my granddad was capable of making anything possible for me. Like, for example, I knew that if I told him I want this, he would figure out a way of giving it to me. Now, at that point, I probably didn't understand that I need to go and manifest it by praying so deeply about it. Or even if I did, I knew that if I deeply pray about it and then talk to him, my answer was going to come instantly. So, yeah, I don't know if it's what they still call a genie in a bottle, genie in a bottle, or genie in a box, or whatever it is. But
But
yeah,
yeah.
it's like I would pray, and then after praying, I would go and unpack my gift. And unpacking that gift was by just telling my grandfather that, oh, Daddy, so there is this and this. How do I go about it? And there, I would have a response. And if he had to make a call, he would make the call immediately. So I was very sure and confident that with him, I would never suffer. Because I mean, what is suffering when you have a father really who is very well connected? I remember, for example, there's a time I needed to do internship, and there's this particular law firm that I was looking at, and then I went and told him that, oh, Daddy, I want to do internship, and I'm thinking of this and this place. Before I could even finish my statement, he just said, hold on, and got his phone and called the owner of the law firm to tell them
Wow.
that I wanted internship. And of course, owner of the law firm said, let her come to me. So I knew that for as long as he's there, everything is going to go smoothly. But unfortunately, now we're at a point where he was not there. And very many other things happened after that. Of course, over time, you experience other things. So, and then also the loss alone exposes you. Exposes you in a sense that your fears are now literally looking at you in the face. Yeah. And with those fears, then you need to figure out how to move forward. And then you'll experience a bit of failure, you'll experience a bit of rejection, you'll experience so many setbacks. And sometimes it's not that they're supposed to be there, but mentally, you have literally called them in because you don't know how to deal with the very significant loss you're experiencing in that moment. So 2013 was very difficult, honestly. So yes, I'm transitioning from university to law development center, and basically my life is going upwards in as far as you can look at life generally. And then this happens, and then you're now thinking, okay, so what next? And it happened at a time when we were also doing exams at the Law Development Center. So you find out that you have lost someone, but you have to go into an exam room there and then you're
Yeah.
thinking, okay, so how is this going to play out? And incidentally, many people knew how close my granddad and I were. So even my father, his son, on the day he passed away, I think also maybe just to protect me, nobody could bring themselves to tell me the
Tell you.
truth that he was gone. So at around 5 a.m., he sent me a message and told me that, don't worry, Dad is going to be okay. I think because he knew I had an exam. Then some other friend of mine from home, back home in the village, at around 6 a.m., sent me a condolence message.
Man.
So now I'm trying to reconcile. In my head, I'm thinking, why are you condoling with me? My dad has just told me our father is going to be okay. Now you're condoling with me. What is this? So anyway, so yeah. And then, as you can imagine, the confusion, the anxiety, so many things happened around that time. So I also believe I went through a depression that I didn't know I was going through. And it's only later that I figured out that, oh, actually could have been depression. And besides, people never used to talk about mental health as much as we talk about it now. And
Yeah.
even me, who had studied it when we were learning about the right to health at law school, I didn't really give it much time. Even if I read the Mental Health Act and all those, it's not that I could just think that, hey,
Yeah.
hold up. Because anyway, I'm not a doctor. I cannot diagnose. So I
Yeah.
didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
So post-university, a lot happened. And then with also those experiences, there's issues of relationships and friendships to deal with around that time. And this again, you have to figure out as a person as you journey on,
Yeah.
because that is life. And then also you realize that when you get out of university, actually from the time we are born up to the point we exit this world, everything rotates around relationships, community, because
Yeah.
every single day you're meeting someone, you're learning
Someone.
something
Yeah.
from them, you're teaching them something, you are choosing to either continue to connect with them or to
Or
disconnect
not.
with them.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
about relationships. That is really
Yeah.
life, yeah?
That's true. Yeah.
So I transitioned from university to work. Well, I think God has been very gracious that even after I felt like my life was coming to an end, I was able to finally get a job. And I think I was lucky in that area that I had the opportunity to choose between two jobs. And capitalistic reasons, I joined Airtel. Yeah. Where I have been working up to now. I think
Oh wow.
it's now 9 years. Yeah, because I joined Airtel in 2015. So maybe just to say that from 2013 after my granddad, then LDC 2014, so much happens around that time, and then 2015 I get a job at Airtel, but I'd also worked in some other places, and that's where I've been to
Yeah.
date. And maybe just to say that also because of my upbringing, I think I have some sort of connections of like, I don't know if I'm just loyal or if it's that I easily get attached.
Attached. Yes.
Yeah,
You're like, I can't leave. I can't leave.
like, by the time I really let go, it's taken me time to let go. And then also, because even after somebody, for example, hurts you and all, you first try to mend the relationship. You'll be the one trying so hard, yeah. So explains partly, yeah. So there's that. Then there's the recovering people pleaser, but then explains why I've been in that place for as long as I've been there.
Mm.
And work really still growing, but even as you're growing, you are also evolving as a person. And
Mm.
then you also meet another boy. I hear people now
Mm-hmm.
calling them mans. Yeah, so I meet
Mm.
another.
Mans.
I had a couple of those relationships as well. And then,
Mm.
of course, there's always one that will stand out, or the one
Yeah.
that will become the relationship.
Mm.
And yeah, I conceived a child. Yeah, so that
Mm.
is it. You asked university and work. So when I got into work, yes.
Yeah. And I know I wouldn't want you to tell everything about that experience because I definitely want people to read your book and experience that for you. Thank you so much for sharing so many parts about your grandpa that were not in your book. you know, I know you wrote so much about him, but now I can see why it impacted you so much based on what you explained in the village. He was your protector, he was your this, he was your this, but not even just your dad. He was more to you, that he was like your everything. Just briefly share with us. It's up to you if you want to go a little bit more in detail, but that experience of motherhood and family and yeah, how you're navigating life right now with fam.
Okay, so well, motherhood. Nothing I really planned to go through because well, everybody has that dream of how their life is going to pan out. I'm
Yes.
going to go through school, then I'll get a boyfriend, then
Have
we'll get
children.
married, then we'll have children. I
Yeah.
didn't have that.
Mm.
I don't know if I don't know why though. I don't know if it is because of my upbringing, but I didn't have that. However,
Mm.
when it finally happened, because I remember when I joined Airtel, initially my plan was to go and do my master's.
Mm.
So, and it was when I joined, it was just a 6 months contract. So I didn't think I was going to stay for as long as I have stayed. Yeah,
Mm. Mm.
I didn't think that after stepping in for 6 months, because of my love language, I would get very attached. But anyway, um, having a family or even having children, for that matter,
Mm.
wasn't on my to-do list at that time. Yeah,
Mm.
and finding out that actually I was with child was a shock. Of course, some people will say, how can it be a shock when you are there
Mm. Mm.
masquerading? Yeah. And I hear you, and I know that you're entitled to your opinion, but there's also many stories that I had had. But then beyond that, I think I had a medical report
Mm.
that seemed to suggest that I can't conceive.
Huh.
Did I share that in the book?
I don't know. I don't remember
Any,
you
I'm not
saying
sure.
that.
But anyway, so even when I
No, you
found out,
didn't.
or when they told me I had a baby growing within me, I had, when I went to the hospital, I was waiting for them to give me an option of,
Yes.
what, you can't have this child, man, you can't. Like,
Mm.
so, but when I went there, the doctor said, you can have the child. Why can't you have the child? We've seen very many people like you who have had the children, so you have the child.
Yeah.
So I carried on with my little girl. And now that also became a bit of a turning point for me because now I had
Mm.
to figure out how to navigate the pregnancy.
Mm.
What kind of mother was I going to be? Remember, I didn't grow up with my mother, me as me.
Mm. Mm.
Oh, well, I had an idea of how other people are mothering, but just by seeing, because, well, I'd seen my auntie
Mm.
raise her sons. My auntie who is married to my
Mm.
paternal uncle, but
Mm.
then also I have another special maternal auntie
Mm.
who, for example, on my graduation, sent me his battalion to keep me company. So I had seen them, and I partly knew what it meant to love a child, but not to the depth of a child who is yours. Yeah. So now for me, the one way I really do that is by reading a lot. There's a friend of mine who said that when they come onto my laptop and they see anything I'm reading about, chances are high it's something I'm experiencing. So I do a lot of deep dive reading to figure out, So I remember reading quite a lot on how to navigate the pregnancy, on how to take care of the baby. I went to YouTube and found prayers for unborn children. I did so much, and of course, even then, when there's a particular prayer that I came across that was really significant for me, and it was a prayer of an unborn child to God and the mother. So this little child who is unborn is praying to God and to the mother. And I could only imagine the sensitivity of that prayer, because I mean, the child is even wondering, what name are you going to give me? Will it be Isaiah? Will it be, oh, are you going to love me? Oh, sometimes, by the way, I feel like you're crying, but when you're crying, it affects me too. And you're like,
Wow.
so you think about it. It was such a deep prayer that instantly I fell in love with a little girl that was growing inside of me without so much effort, because I want to think I felt pity for them.
If you've made it this far, I just want to thank you for giving Fortunate the safe space to share her story. A heartfelt thank you to Fortunate for sharing her remarkable journey with us today. I was truly honored to have her on the SheCentre podcast, and I do believe that the first part of this episode has inspired you as it inspired me. If Fortunate's story has touched you or sparked reflection, be sure to catch the second part of her narrative next week. Your thoughts and experiences matter to me, so join the conversation on social media. And yeah, your feedback shapes the heart of the community. So please comment, follow, share, and remember, in every story, there is resilience, growth, and wisdom. So as we wrap up today's episode, I want to express my gratitude to each one of you, my cherished SheCentre family. Your support makes every conversation possible. Stay connected, stay inspired, and until next time, take care of yourselves. Love you. Please help me spread the word by sharing our episodes with your friends, family, and followers. Let's amplify the voices of women, break barriers, challenge stereotypes, and create a network of support and empowerment. Together, we can bring about positive change and make this world a better place for all. This is SheCentre, the female podcast, where women's stories matter. I love you all. God bless.